Hey everyone, it's Scott here from SEQ Sports Fishing, Estuary Charters and Tuition, and here we are on a beautiful spring day here on the Gold Coast, and basically going to do up this tuition video in regards to explaining to my clients and my followers on the page in regards to a really big factor with the fishing here in South East Queensland at the moment, and that is the season transition phases that we're currently experiencing. So I get a lot of new followers on the page. I have done this video previously, the last couple of years, but it's always good to give people a good refresh in regards to the current situation of the fishing and what to expect in the coming months and what the big differences are between winter and spring here on the Gold Coast. So a lot of my clients are people who have moved here from other areas in Australia. So firstly, you got to remember is that fishing in different parts of Australia is generally a lot different in how these fish spawn, different seasons, different species of fish, and how we target them as fishing guides, and also to teach clients how to be more successful and to actually catch more fish at different times a year. So one of the really big things here in South East Queensland that we have compared to most parts of Australia is that we have good fishing here all year round. We don't really have a downtime. The big thing that changes is the seasons and the species that do change throughout the different times of year, and where the fish move and how they work. So this is one thing I teach my clients on every charter, but this is a good rundown in the difference between winter to the warmer months. So, for example, we've just come out of a winter. We've had a very cold winter, probably one of the coldest winters I've experienced on the water in a long time. Winter time up here is spawning time for these fish. So, again, different parts of Australia, they spawn at different times in different areas. But up here in South East Queensland, these fish spawn through the winter months, and what happens is that you have your estuary-based fish and you have your offshore fish. They all basically spawn through the cooler months, from around about April right through to say late August, early September. What makes these fish spawn is that we get the lower daylight days, so the hours of daylight is shorter, and the temperature drop in the water and obviously in the air, and we get different moon cycles. So through the winter months we get the smaller tides through the day, bigger at night. They're the three main things that make these fish spawn through the winter months. With estuary-based fish, they basically will come out of the back rivers a lot, and they will spawn around the mouths of the system in the deeper parts of the Broadwater Seaway, around the beaches. And that's why you would have seen the last, for example, the last 4 or 5 months, the bream they're spawning in huge numbers, and they come very dominant through the winter months. And a lot of your offshore fish, they spawn in the shallow reefs offshore, and that's why they've got stuff like snapper bands and stuff in place through winter to protect those spawning fish throughout the winter months. So another big thing on the Gold Coast here is we get the arrow squid. They actually come in to the system throughout the cooler months to spawn. That's a known trait. That's why we target that style of fishing a lot at that time of year. So what happens now is that we're in a transition phase. So we go from that spawning bite, and you would have noticed the last 2 or 3 weeks is that the temperatures are rising. The daylight hours, are getting longer now. And you would have noticed too, the tides are getting bigger. So basically everything swaps. So we're now getting bigger tides through the day, smaller tides through the night, up into summertime. And the water temps are rising, the temperatures are rising, and you would notice a really quick change, which generally happens this time of year, and the fish go from their spawning bite where they're getting fat, they're feeding up aggressively, really being hungry fish, into a spring bite which basically the fish decondition a lot. So a lot of the estuary fish, you'll see the fish actually decondition, and what they'll do is they'll start to spread out in the system. So instead of being schooled up in the broadwater like your bream and stuff like I've been catching, they will then start to push up in the back rivers and the canals. That's a very common trait that we see this time of year. The big difference is that in the spring, summer months, we normally see a lot more different species of fish. So a lot of those reef fish that have been spawning offshore, they will start to push into the estuary systems. It's very common. Fish like snapper, tuskfish, spangled emperor, morwong, get a lot of pelagics, your trevally and all that stuff will start to push into the systems throughout different times of the year, chasing in the bait and etc. The squid side of things, they tend to die off a lot around about September, October, just depending on the water temperatures and the conditions we get. Not saying you won't catch them through the warmer months, but winter time is generally the main thing for squid. They usually spawn, and as the water temps rise, they usually die off. That's their cycle, and then basically that's how it works. So I've been up here fishing for 25 years. I've won 25 tournaments on the Gold Coast and guiding professionally for 10 years. And when you're on the water all the time, you learn these things, and that's basically how this system works. So what to expect in the next, say, 4 or 5 months. So basically what will happen is that I'm starting to see that now. Early September, I usually take a bit of a break because this transition phase can be a bit tricky to fish at certain times because the fish moves so quick. And you'll be catching fish in the broadwater 30, 40 a day to catch them like 5. And then you've got to go spend a couple of weeks trying to find what's going on with the fish and where they're moved to. So I usually have a bit of a quieter September, early September, and then really get into it, say, mid to late September, because it gives me a bit more indication of what's going on with the fish and the waterways. I don't want to give customers a bad day just by going out. So I will stop squid fishing about now, and I will really focus on fishing the broadwater reefs and the canals. So the big thing is with the broadwater is that in the next, say, 2 or 3 months, for the next 4 or 5 months, we should start seeing a lot more different species of fish. Your snapper coming in, and we get a lot of good snapper coming in the broadwater throughout the warmer months. Your spangled emperor, your flatties really come on this time of year. You still get your bream, it's just a huge mixed bag of fish that we get in the broadwater. The other big way I'll be fishing a lot is in the canals. So the canal side of things is something I really focus on a lot in the warmer months. Chasing your bream, chasing your mangrove jacks, which is a really big thing in the warmer months, and your trevally and stuff like that, using like surface lures and hard bodies and different styles of lures that we use. So that's basically what we work off. As I said before, mangrove jacks, this is their best time of year, I find. Usually from about September right through to, say, December is like my prime time for jacks. But you get them all year round. But one thing you got to remember too is that it's always different, these fishing. It's never the same every year. I've been doing this for 10 years guiding. Every season I get a run of certain fish, certain things. It's always different, You can never say it's the same every year. That lot of contributing factors such as conditions and rainfall and water temperatures and bait fish and all this stuff. So as a fishing guide, people come on my boat to learn. I put them onto the best fishing I can do with what's there at the time. So anyway, guys, I hope that's a good rundown for you, what to experience and why we're in this bit of a transition phase at the moment. Bookings up to Christmas are really, really busy. From basically Wednesday onwards, I'm booked out to middle of October, and then I've only got like about 15 dates left to Christmas. So if you want to book in down the bottom here, experience some really good spring fishing here on the coast in Redcliffe. And hope it gives a bit of information and gives you some more help about what's happening at the moment?